Greetings, viewers. We want to welcome you to our new show, Come Together, where we will be interviewing men of color, positive men of color, and discussing the issues that surround us every day. So we want you to stay tuned. Every Monday at 5 p.m., we will be adding a new video that you can watch as we add it, or you can watch it later on YouTube. Hopefully, you will subscribe and like this channel, and you will become one of our faithful viewers. My name is Brian J.T. Watts, and I will be your host. And now, come together.
This is the greatest game of telephone that has ever been played. Someone said the black man doesn't raise his kids or care for his family, and that message is still being told to everyone today. They even have us saying,
"We are not a monolith. We have various opinions and thoughts. We are much more than what we are portrayed to be by the media.
Even when we are the victims of injustice, we are still portrayed as the perpetrators. When it comes to the black man, there is an intentional plan to discredit the past, arrest the present, and destroy the future. Something must be done, but nothing will work until we come together." Okay, ladies and gentlemen, viewers out there, we are talking today to Mr. Kenny Anderson, mental health professional, educator, talk show host, director of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and a mentor. Kenny, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great, Brian. It's great to see you. Happy New Year and all that other good stuff, man. I just hope everything is going well for you.
Hey, well, the stuff that's not going well, we're not going to talk about. But yeah, basically, things are going great. It's definitely great to see you in this new year. I know that you have been doing a lot of things, all the things that I mentioned. One thing I just want to say to our viewers is that you have already broken the stereotype of that most black men have out there in the world, that we're lazy. You're doing more jobs than most. And with all of those jobs, and these are not things, people, that he has done in the past. These are all things that he is currently doing. And so it's a lot. And I'd like to show people that we're out there hustling in a positive way, doing things that affect the community, doing things that affect our brothers and sisters and the world at large. So definitely wanted to thank you for being that kind of person and for being here with us today. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and what you're doing for the community down there in Huntsville, Alabama?
Yeah, so listen, I'm just a brother that grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, spent all of my first 21 years of my life in the city, various boroughs, going to school, going to church, get involved in various activities, decided to come to Oakwood College then, which is university today, majored in psychology, spent many years in the field of mental health counseling, transitioned out of that into teaching part-time at Calhoun Community College, as well as some other local schools. In fact, I've taught at 5 schools here in this area now, in a variety of different areas. But I ended up landing in higher education full-time. I became a full-time classroom instructor for about 3 years. I spent 5 years as a department chair in the Department of Social Sciences, and then I spent 5 years as the Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences. So a lot of history in the higher education arena, working with young people, working with non-traditional students, and helping to inspire people and motivate them towards success. And then about 9 years ago, I got a call to come to work for the mayor's office and the Office of Multicultural Affairs at the time. And we successfully transitioned that office to the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion this past August. That's August of 2021. It's been my desire over the time that I've been in this role to make sure that we were being accountable to the people in this community, to make sure that we're being representative, to make sure that we're speaking for the voiceless and creating opportunities and space for everyone to feel included in this, what is now the largest city in the state of Alabama. So my goal every day is basically just to connect with people, to try to help people experience the fullness of the community, to help them feel like they're equal parts of the community, and that they have representation in all aspects of the community. That's what I do in the area of working for the city, but of course I have my 31-year-old radio show, which I'm firing up every Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I have a tremendous opportunity to do that. On the ground, I'm working with a nonprofit called Leadership Empowerment Enterprise that focuses on 3 things. That's adult mentoring, that is professional development seminars that are absolutely free every first Wednesday of the month. And then I have philanthropic efforts at Calhoun and Oakwood. I have 2 endowed scholarships. The Calhoun Scholarship, we've had 6 students go to school in that scholarship, and we're anticipating the first student going to school on the scholarship that was just established last fall at Oakwood. So we've got a lot of things going on. Of course, family. I'm married to Sonia. Sonia and I will be celebrating our 21st year this March. And then, of course, we're full-time caregivers now. My mother-in-law has been living with us since July of 2020. And so you talk about jobs that I had and jobs that I have now. Life is fluid, man. You just kind of roll with whatever you got going on.
Well, you've done it, and you've eliminated, as you're just being yourself, a lot of what people think we don't do. Care for our families and work. So, I mean, that's something that's very positive. And one of the reasons why you're one of the first people, actually my first guest on this show, from the perspective of a Black man in America, how has your office positively affected the African-American community there?
Well, one of the things that I knew immediately coming into this office was that we needed to have a higher profile. People needed to know that we existed, and people needed to know that we existed for them. Now, that's always a delicate balance, because people, what I've learned in the space of whether it's multicultural affairs or whether it is diversity, equity, and inclusion, people come to this space from their own unique perspective. So whatever matters to them is basically based on whatever experiences they've had, for the most part. Occasionally you'll have people where people will be moved by large national and international things that happen, i.e. George Floyd, when the whole world paid attention. But typically people live their lives on their block. They live their lives in their schools, their churches, or houses of faith. They live their jobs within their own units. Right. And so that's where they experience whatever's going on. So as a Black person, what I've done is I've tried to have a sensitivity to the Black experience that I've had as a Black man in America, but also understanding that there are people out there who are on a continuum as it relates to our Black experience, our shared Black experience. When we say shared Black experience, I'm just talking about the color alone. I'm not talking about the fact that there's still inequity. There is still, unfair access or unequal access to certain things like healthcare, education, jobs, housing, etc. There are efforts to stabilize those things and address those things and to balance those things. I get that, but I can never walk into a situation, as a double degree person, having worked ever since I was 16 years old, having had some measure of success in life, and believe every other person is like me. Right. I have to have a sensitivity to where people are. And I think that for me, that's what I brought to the office. So I don't see it as a cookie cutter approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is and one size fits all. It's what's going on with you. So it's at the very basic level, it's a relational job. So it's moving about the community, it's meeting people, it's attending events, it's advocating for people, it's trying to create balance in the experience of living life through your own cultural context as it relates to your race and ethnicity that I've tried to focus on.
That sounds good. Sounds good. I think that your time as an educator probably plays a big part in that as well, because being an educator myself and having been an administrator and a teacher, I know that I can't treat students the way I was treated when I was a student. They're not like me. They're a lot younger than me, and they're in a different world than I was when I was in school. Also, as an administrator, I had to learn to treat each situation totally differently. Some people had different stimuli, some people had different issues, some people had different reasons why certain things were happening. So like you said, it couldn't be a cookie cutter approach to anything. I mean, when you start to hear the stories of people, I think that we start to understand why they may be acting the way they are, or why things may be happening the way they are. And speaking of that, I was looking at all the hype around Antonio Brown. And I was saying to some people, and I wanted to know if you agreed with this, that it seems that no matter what happens to our people in sports or in entertainment, that as soon as someone starts to act in a way that's not typical, they become the brunt of jokes from our community, not from another community, from our community first. Then months or sometimes even years later, we get the true story and we all understand. But it's a little late now because we've joked this person into oblivion. What would you say to something like that to people about what's going on, especially right now while we're in the midst of this Antonio Brown debacle?
Yeah, it's clear, especially as a mental health professional, it's clear that Antonio Brown has some emotional instability in his life. And so from a human perspective, from a mental health perspective, I empathize with whatever it is that he's going through. I don't know if something's been diagnosed. I don't know if he's talking to anyone right now. I absolutely know that if he is not talking to someone or has not talked to someone, he needs to. And that's a huge hurdle sometimes because, again, someone asked me just a little while ago, they said, are men really taking full advantage of healthcare and self-care and mental health care? And I think there's been a lot of progress and improvement, but I still think that we're socialized to be tough, to internalize our pain, we suffer in silence. As a consequence of that, we act out in self-destructive ways as a consequence, and all of that blows back. Now, Antonio Brown, of course, has a huge stage. The NFL is about as big a stage as you can get other than things like the NBA, et cetera. And so clearly people are going to focus on him. And here's where an interesting thing happens, Brian, too, because we see these athletes as jaded individuals and these celebrities as jaded people. We see them as very fortunate, very blessed to be in a place where many of us will never be. I mean, people are throwing money at you hand over foot, and they're bowing down to your every need, and they're facilitating things in your life, and you're getting second, third, 20, 30, 40 chances. And it's like, somebody else would have had to keep, if that was me, they would have thrown the key away. That's what people always say. Right. And so we kind of equate what's happening with people like Antonio Brown with ourselves. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, there's the common denominator that runs through all of us, and that's our humanity. And just because you have a degree of fame or celebrity does not mean that you don't have personal challenges, that you don't have flaws, that you don't have issues in your own life and responsibilities that may be overwhelming, and that you're automatically, because you make millions of dollars, you're able to handle stress and the big public limelight and the social media chatter that people throw at you. That it doesn't mean that. And so at some level, we've got to be empathetic to what Antonio Brown is dealing with. And when I saw him melt down on the field in a recent game, I thought, boy, what an unfortunate and sad situation. I just hope this brother gets some help. And of course, he's been on Twitter ever since then. It's been incoming all week. Every time he goes on Twitter, the brother definitely has some issues and some challenges. And I just hope that the people in his inner circle can reach him in a meaningful way and just convince him of something I think we all need. And that is the opportunity to vet those internal things that are going on and do it in a way that can really help us.
Exactly. I mean, I think that also, and I've been trying to find a way to put something like this together. Our athletes and our entertainers are usually, for the most part, people who come from low income situations. Going from low income to an insane income is not the blessing most people think it is. When you have a small drug habit in the projects and somebody gives you millions of dollars, now you have a big drug problem in a big house somewhere. If you've never managed money or had a bank account and now somebody gives you a bunch of money, you don't know what you're doing. You don't have the people around you to tell you what to do. Maybe it's a family situation where your whole family has been in this and now you're responsible for bringing everybody up. I mean, there are so many things that happen when people from low income situations, and not just African Americans, anybody in a low income situation goes from low income to high income and insanely high incomes at that. They don't work their way up. People like you and me I'm sure we've changed the income that we grew up with, maybe when we grew up in New York, but obviously we have not hit those marks. And even if we do hit them now, we've steadily grown. You know, we inched our way up. So we learned things as we moved. But when you go from being in high school and college and just barely making it to all of a sudden $1 million contracts, there are things that's going to happen. There are relationships that are going to change. There are people who are going to be after you. There are all kinds of things that are going to stress you. And when you've never dealt with that kind of lifestyle, it's almost just known that you're going to blow up. You're going to self-destruct. You're going to implode. Something is going to happen, and you're going to find yourself, you know, somewhere where you never thought you would be. And so that's why I kind of look at these guys and say, you know, there needs to be some type of preparation. Some friends of mine and I were looking at trying to work on something that we could do for high schoolers that were in entertainment and in different sports categories, so that they could start to train now and understand what you need to do when these types of things happen, so that you don't jump out there from, you know, just into the fire and become, you know, somebody who's not going to be able to make it because of mental issues, because of something that we thought was going to bless us indefinitely. And it's odd that those things that we looked at as blessings become the things that ultimately destroy us.
Yeah, you're right. And I think, you know, every celebrity, we're talking about athletes, musicians, etc. Every celebrity needs, I think, at a minimum, 3 things when they begin, and even before they move into that area of celebrity, but when they may feel like that's beginning to happen,
Right.
They need to have a financial advisor that they can trust.
Mm-hmm.
They need to have what I'll call, or what we call in the spiritual world, an armor bearer, somebody who's going to kind of stand between them and the world and not tell them what they want to hear, but tell them what they need to hear.
Right.
And then they also need a mental health therapist. They need somebody to talk to on a regular basis, not because they're crazy. See, this is something that we still need to, dismiss in terms of how we talk about therapy. Oh man, I ain't going to talk to no therapist. I ain't crazy. And I'm like, look, I'll tell you, like my wife's grandmother used to always say, she said, everybody's a little mentally. Including me, Brian, including me.
Right.
I got issues. I got to see, it begins with me. It begins with me acknowledging that. And just the same way that people can say, well, Kenny, you know, he walks this talk, you know, and he does this, he does that. I need to do the same thing in terms of my own issues and managing those things. I need to say, yes, you know, if I can't handle something, yes, I do need to talk to someone. I do need to share with someone who can give me that. And I think that, and I'm saying celebrities need that because that's what we're talking about, but I think everybody needs those things in their life in order to be able to have it. Yeah, oh man, in order to have that balance, man, because we're living in some very challenging times.
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, I had a time where I actually went to a therapist, and I don't think either one of us are these big macho tough guys. We're New Yorkers. There's an element of toughness that's because of where we're from. But we don't come off as, you know, these hardcore guys. But even us, we still had this aversion to therapy and stuff. And even some people who are in your field still have an aversion to it. They're like, yeah, well, I might do it for you, but I'm not going to do it to myself. So I broke down and went, and I remember it was an older African American lady in Brooklyn. Someplace I didn't want to be because, you know, I'm from the Bronx, and it was deep in Brooklyn. And way like at the end of the 2 train, like I'm way deep in, and I'm like, I don't want to be out here. And I meet this lady for the first time. Coming in, was in her home, and when I sat down to talk to her, and I looked around her apartment, it was so calming, and everything was sort of like when you go to a massage to get a massage or something. Everything fits what you're going to do. It just everything fit. And she looked at me and she said, I'm going to tell you right now, Brian, you won't be coming here long. And I was like, really? She said, no, you seem like you have things together. You just need to know where you are and what you're doing, if it's correct or not. And we're going to talk and we're going to go through it. And I said, okay. I'm like, she said, but you're going to talk. If I'm gonna talk, I can go home. I can talk to myself. You know, what are you doing? What am I paying you for? But she sat there and allowed me to talk myself into solutions.
Mm.
And then what she did was she validated my solutions by the other things I had said. It's like, these things fit because you said this and the other. And then she made me think about some things. And I was like, wow, is this what therapy is? Okay, because I can do this. You know, I mean, and it wasn't like she had a book of this is how I do therapy. She was looking at me like, this is Brian and this is what he needs. And when I started to realize that, then I said, okay, you know what? If people care enough in their profession to sort of give me like an education, it would be like an IEP. I mean, it was just for me. Then people will start to understand I need to go to therapy. Oh, somebody's going to come and tailor this for me. This is what I need. Then I think a lot more people would go, and I think a lot more people would be helped. In this time in COVID, I know for sure that the way my life has changed. I came back from teaching abroad right during COVID. And so coming back to the United States and not having all the things I had over there, not doing all the things I was doing over there, my life changed immediately. And there was a lot to adjust to. Of course, there were things that were good. There are things that were like, okay, I was doing this, that, and the other before, and now I can't do those things. I can't. I live in Maryland where I've never lived before, and there are friends all around me that I haven't seen because we're still in a pandemic. You know, I'm a social person. You know, so there were certain things that you had to realize, yes, I might be a little depressed about these things. I might be a little down, and I might not even realize that I'm down. So talking to people and getting it out and just, you know, being around people who have mental health professions and have those kind of skills is important. And it's amazing. All of a sudden, I had so many friends that were in mental health that I was talking to. I was like, well, maybe I am crazy because I all you know, so everybody's here. And but it was good. So I think that a lot of us need that, even if we just talk to our friends and get things out, put things out in the open so we can hear them and other people can hear them and we can start to talk about this, then it would help. But I think that our celebrities and our people that we look up to don't often get that because they're so busy trying to keep everything up on top for everybody, to live that life so you can keep looking at them. And the emergence of social media and everything has made it even more important for them to stay on top. And it's so hard. It's hard of a job for people like us who might have shows and things like that just to keep the shows on top, but to keep your life and every single thing you do, it's got to be insane. So definitely, I'm glad that that's a part of your wheelhouse. That's something that you can put in because I think it connects well with all the other things that you're doing. It's not something that's my wheelhouse, but I have people like you and like Gary Graham and all these other people who are mental health people who can say, okay, Brian, hey, it's time for you to calm down. It's time for you to sit down or relax or do something else. Moving on, as an educator now, I know we have a lot in common as far as this part is concerned, but I know that you're familiar with the achievement gap, or the achievement gap, I call it, and all of the negative stereotypes that surround Black males in education. What do you say to combat these kinds of stereotypes and things to our youth when you come across them?
We know for a fact that the reality of something you just said a moment ago about socioeconomic status, and of course we're talking about as relates to athletes, but the socioeconomic status of a family impacts their ability to learn for a lot of different reasons. First of all, it may impact the quality of the school that they may go to. Secondly, it may impact the access that child has to their parents as a consequence of their educational experience. And what's real interesting about that, I need to say this real quick before I forget it. I grew up in public housing, Lower East Side of Manhattan. Parents were in a lower income bracket, but yet my parents encouraged me and my sisters to go to school every day. They showed up at PTA meetings. They looked at report cards. They checked us on the homework piece. I mean, it wasn't like I ain't got no homework. No, and it wasn't a whole lot of TV. It was like 1 hour TV a day. So there's a huge thing that happens in homes that I think is essential to our ability to educate young people and minimize that gap. And that's the availability of parents. Well, now you've got the stress of some parents who have to work 2, 3 jobs in order to make a living wage. You got some that are in situations where they're in single parent homes, and that's not the bane of society like a lot of people say, because we can point out, scores and hundreds and thousands of families where single parenting was what happened, but children turned out absolutely fantastic. So I don't just look down on that. What I simply say is this: we have to have a communal approach to education, meaning that we've got to do more on the focus of mentoring, and January is National Mentoring Month. We've got to elevate the value of these organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, 100 Black Men Greater Huntsville, and the national chapter, and all of these other agencies that move into the lives of young people and try to bridge that gap. I'm a member of the 100 Black Men of Greater Huntsville, and we have a program where twice a month we have our mentees come in. We expose them to reading and math, tutors.
Wow.
It's by intention that those things happen. We've had a partnership with Hudson Alpha Institute of Biotechnology, where we expose them to things related to the biotech field. So they're culturing DNA and other kinds of things, exposing them to the opportunity for STEM careers, which is huge right now. We have to, with intent, reach out to our young people. We can't sit back with pity. And this is what I see so many times, Brian. Oh, what a horrible thing our children are in. What a terrible situation they're in. And we're sitting here on the sidelines when the question that we should be asking ourselves is, what am I doing to engage in the game? What are our faith institutions doing? What are our local nonprofits doing? What are our local organizations and agencies doing? What are historical agencies doing, like the NAACP and more? We've got an educational emphasis. We got a political emphasis. I understand that we focus on specific things in those areas, but how are we advocating for the future of our young people in meaningful and productive ways? Are we going to Board of Education meetings and holding our administrators accountable for the process of the educational process? What are we doing in that process to be able to really do something meaningful and productive in order to help our young people? So on the one hand, I acknowledge the challenges that exist, but as a person in the trenches, and having been in the trenches now for almost 3 decades, I know that there are far too many foot soldiers in the game, far too few foot soldiers in the game. Let me back up a minute. Far too few foot soldiers in the game. And that's not to, I never pat myself on the back and say, look what I did. Right. What I end up doing is getting acknowledged for doing certain things. And I'm saying almost with a sense of remorse. Well, where were you?
Right.
Why am I the only one being recognized? I'm not looking for accolades and kudos for stuff that I know that needs to be done. What I need is more people in the game. Right. I need an army of people who are willing to say that there is a zero tolerance for underachievement and failure for our young people. That's what I need to see. And once we set that standard, then we know what we need to do in order to make that possible. Yeah. That creates a higher degree of accountability. That creates a high degree of motivation and inspiration for our young people. And it creates the opportunity for them to move forward and succeed in the future. And for me, that's the only way it can happen, because we can't eliminate all the gaps. We can't eliminate all the challenges. We can't eliminate all the problems, but we can be a bridge in order to build and to bridge the gap between those challenges and issues so that people can begin moving forward. And that's where I see the part of the answer being, it's what am I doing? I got to ask myself. And this, of course, this is the King holiday month. So, it's like one of his biggest questions was the greatest question that you can ask yourself is, what are you doing to serve mankind? I'm paraphrasing, but, oh, Dr. King's holiday's coming up. I got a day off. And, no. How are you serving your community? Right. And I'm not even going to say here's the deal. It's not equal service. It's equal commitment. So I'm not going to have the same amount of time that somebody else may have, and vice versa. But I can be equally committed to say we both agree that something's got to be done. So does that mean I need to write a check? Does that mean I need to encourage somebody to get involved? Does that mean I need to be supportive in terms of some effort or initiative, in terms of a writing campaign or a petition or some advocacy group? I need to ask myself, what am I doing in terms of the process, and then get in that game? And we need to do that at all levels, not just at the well-established levels. We need to bring that down into academic institutions of higher education, where we're training our young people to be prepared for the future as educators. We need to expose them to those opportunities, and we need to do that on a regular and consistent basis.
That sounds good. It sounds good. I mean, I was reading an article, and this article is almost 8 years old now, from 2014, and it was called "The 7 Lies We Need to Stop Telling About African American Males." I was shocked to see some of the things that are still out there today, because it means that no one was reading this article, or the people who were reading it just, kept it on the low. So I wanted to get your viewpoint on, I'm just going to touch on 2 of them. One of them was that there are more Black males in jail than in college. Now, this article was written in 2014, and in 2011, a Howard University professor, Ivory Todson, found in his research that there were about 600,000 more African American males enrolled in higher education than there were in jail. Now, when I saw 600,000, I thought he was going to say that's how many guys were in college, or that's how many were in jail. Either one was going to be okay with me. But there's 600,000 more. That means that it's grossly over that number of people in jail. That means that this lie has been perpetrated at least from 2011 is when he figured it out. So, I mean, just from 2011 to now, that's almost, 10, 11 years now? And we're still saying this. And I'm not saying that we're just saying it in our community to each other. People are preaching this from pulpits. People are saying that even the president of the United States at the time, which was our president, was saying things like this. And these stats, they sort of, flow into everybody's psyche and into everybody's speech, and it all sounds good and it's supposed to be encouraging, but it can be sort of damning sometimes. And I wanted to know what you thought about that. That one, I'm going to bring up another one in a minute, but what do you think about that stat? And if it's so much of a difference, how do we start to let people know what the difference is?
Yeah, well, we begin by dispelling the myth, because it is an absolute myth. And I understand why it probably got started. It was in the middle of the escalation of the war on crack cocaine and the mandatory minimum sentencing policies and a whole lot of other stuff that was going on at that time. I understand why that happened. But here's the reality, that this professor uncovered something that is easy to learn and to find out. It's quantifiable. I mean, it's not a hard thing, unfortunately, we live in a nation that incarcerates more of its citizens than any other country in the world, which should raise a flag in the first place. We know that there is a disproportionate amount of those individuals who are going into the system who are Black and brown. We get that. We know that. We understand that. And we need to be doing everything that we can to minimize that on both sides of the process, in terms of the actions that people take, as well as criminal justice system that needs to be reformed. There's no question about that. The prison pipeline, the industrial pipeline, prison industrial pipeline is real. There's no question about that. But here's the point, based on what you're saying, Brian, that what a lot of people also did was they conflated something that is also reality, that at any given time, because of the fact that there have been a lot of young men in the prison system, when you are released from prison, you are then given a probation officer.
Right.
And that probation officer then tracks you and monitors you for whatever period of time that process takes place. Right. And so not only do you have people who are in prison, but you have a significant number of people, because most of the people that go into prison are going to come out. That's another myth that a lot of people don't understand. Right. If you're going in, you're probably going to come out for the most part. The majority of people who go in are going to come out. And so when people come out, you have a large number of people who are under that parole system.
Right.
Or that probation system, I'm sorry. But then you also have people who've been paroled who are also being tracked and monitored.
Right.
And so you've got a large number of people as a consequence of that. The number of those individuals combined with the number of people in prison very likely is larger than the number of people, number of Black men in school. But we have to be very careful about that, because what we're saying is, when we go out there and we say that, you know, more black men in prison than there are in college, we are absolutely doing a disservice to the opportunities that young black men are availing themselves of by engaging in the higher education process. Now, the other piece of that is that there is a declining number of black males who are going to college, and we have to address that as well.
Right.
A lot of people talk about, they often talk about this notion of, you know, college isn't for everyone. And then the other thing they'll say is that, well, I don't know what somebody would do with a 2-year degree. I know what somebody could do with a 2-year degree, because they come to my house from time to time and they fix my plumbing. Right. They fix my heating and air conditioning unit. They give me quotes to do electrical service that sometimes exceed $1,500, $2,500, $3,500. That's what you can do with a 2-year degree.
Or even a certificate. Some just a
certificate. Certificate. Cybersecurity certificate.
That's right.
You know, so we have to have an honest conversation about this dichotomy between the 2-year school and the 4-year school. The idea that, you know, I hear people disparagingly say, you know, going to community college is like going to 13th grade. Ridiculous. I worked at a community college, the largest one in the state of Alabama, for 16 years. I have an endowed scholarship there where 6 people have gone to school on that scholarship. They are excelling. One of the most recent ones is now finishing her master's degree at Alabama A&M in social work.
Wow.
So don't tell me that the community college doesn't have a role and a purpose in people's lives. Don't tell me that people shouldn't go to school for a certificate or a 2-year associate's degree and can't be successful in life. We have to say to people, not just that college isn't for everybody. No, we need to do skills assessments. Right. We need to make them available to all people. We need to move out into communities of color and schools of color and be able to expose our young people to these opportunities and tell them honestly about what's available out there. Right. Don't just say, well, your math scores just don't, put you on a track for success in engineering or science. Don't say that. Because that same person is going to come to my house after they've gone to that trade school, as we used to always say, that technical college, that community college, and they've got that HVAC degree, and they're going to tell me, they're going to give me an estimate on replacing my air conditioner for $6,500. You know, I mean, we got to have an honest conversation about this. So and I tied that to what you said about the numbers in college, because there are ample numbers of young men in college. I don't think there are enough, because sometimes we create that gap because of the conversation that we have, and we create self-doubt in a lot of people. So they graduate from high school, not at the top of the class, but at the bottom of the class. But what I say to people is this: I don't care whether you graduated from the top or the bottom, you graduated, period.
That's right.
And as far as I'm concerned, you now have a blank slate to create your future. If you give yourself the opportunity, if you position yourself properly, you can have mad success as it relates to society. And so, I mean, we're educators, brother. You know how we just
listen, we're gonna get passionate and excited about that every time. And that's gonna lead us to the next one, which is just as bad. That African American male students have the same opportunities as their peers. Now, I had been hearing that all my life. And the sad thing for me with some of these things that I'd been hearing was that I was never in the company of a lot of non-Black people. So I always heard this from my own. And it always made me feel like, well, then what am I supposed to do? You know, like you, I lived in low-income housing in the Bronx, in the South Bronx. My sister and brother and I were pushed to go to school, not to look at trying to work during while we were in school, not to try to do anything, not to do any extracurricular stuff, really anything. Just go to school and learn and do your work. And you know, I remember more about my sister and I because we were close in age, but that's what we did. We did our homework. And I remember getting to a point, because I was great in math, that my mom said, I can't help you with that anymore. I don't even know what you're doing. And I was like, okay, I got it. And it was on me to have it. It wasn't, oh, you know, go find some help. It's like, no, you just do it. And, you know, we did what we had to do. Some of us, sometimes it meant late nights. Sometimes it meant, you know, maybe calling a friend or whatever. But we were pushed to do that. And it was important. There was no one in my class that was so bad off that they were leaving school at the time. I don't remember that. The high school that my sister and I went to, the first dropout, I think when my sister started, was the 4th year of the school. So I came the 5th year. So my class was maybe the 9th or 10th graduating class. The first dropout was in my class. Okay. And we all like wanted to jump him because he messed up the 0 dropout rate. You know what I'm saying? But even the kids that were doing poorly were still staying in to do something. And when I speak to them today, they have done something with their lives, you know? So like you were saying, even though they were at the bottom of the class, so what? They did something. And so we were all pushed to do that. And to hear that people would say we had the same opportunities, we believed that back then. And so we tried to make it work. But this Casey Foundation found that African-American students face the highest barriers to opportunities. The foundation's researchers measured 12 benchmarks, including literacy proficiency, rates of employment, income, and several other factors. And it concluded that African Americans, when compared to others, using those benchmarks, fare the worst due to the disparities that they face even from birth. And what I got from this was not, oh, there's an excuse for us, was, oh, wait, we're still making it in spite of. So if you give us what other people have, we can possibly do a lot more. We can have a lot more of our children come through and go through school. I know for sure that being that kid from the projects, that whenever there was something extra in school that they wanted us to have, I was not going to have it. I just knew that. It's like, okay, if that costs money, I can't do it. You know, if that's a trip that we got to pay for, I'm probably not going to go, you know, but it didn't stop me from learning what I had to learn or doing what I had to do. But they're telling us now, and these are not Black foundations doing this research. So they're telling us that we're faring worse because of different things. It makes me believe, which I believed back then, and a professor I had, Dr. Gates, one of the most intelligent professors that I ever had, who would tell us that there's no achievement gap because you can't compare us. If you're not giving us what you have, you can't compare and say that there's a gap. We don't have the school systems. We don't have the books. We don't have all the stuff you have. The comparison is not something that we can really make. So there's essentially no gap. Until you give us the same stuff you have, there's no comparison. And what would you say to something like that?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. And what I would try to simply say to that is that there is a reality that some of the things that other groups of people have access to, we don't have access to. We traditionally, let me say, have not had access to, either because we didn't have the information, either we didn't have the scores or the grades, either we didn't have the opportunity because of certain logistical challenges at home. You know, my parents were working parents. You know, my dad worked in a factory in New Jersey. He came home every day tired. You know, my mom cleaned homes, and, you know, even though she was there when I got home, you know, I mean, they were not going to be able to take us to certain things. I mean, again, you know, I see parents today, and I've got friends who say that their kids are in traveling sports teams or on traveling sports teams, you know, and they're dropping dollars in order to be able to do that with the travel and the equipment and the memberships and other kinds of things like that. My parents couldn't have done that to provide access for that. So maybe I would have developed into an athlete or, you know, first class athlete. That wouldn't happen. So there's an access issue there in one sense. And a lot of people say, yeah, but, you know, so many Blacks do excel in athletics. So why would you use that as an example? I use that as an example because when you look at certain key sports and you look at certain key sports teams, if you are not a very good player, you will not have access to those kinds of things. You'll have some real limitations as to what you can have access to, and that will have an impact on certain kinds of things as it relates to your socialization. But even beyond that, you know, there are things like honors programs that are embedded in school systems with certain classes that people can take. There's something called dual enrollment that, a student can take college courses in high school and start college with 2 years of college behind them. I mean, think about that, but then how many times are we having that conversation? And I have to say this too, Brian, there's a tension between the public school system and the higher education system as it relates to making those things available and accessible to everyone. I can remember when I was department chair and then dean, how often we had conversations at the local level trying to talk to principals and teachers about saying, we got to get this information in the hands of the students in order to be able to provide them with that opportunity. We need to provide not lunch and learns necessarily, but opportunities for parents to learn more about these opportunities. What will it take? What will it be required? What kinds of academic criteria are a part of that process? And what can we do to support that child in reaching those benchmarks? What can we do? Because we have to have more kids in those areas. We have a ninth grade academy program now at Jemison High, which is the predominantly Black school here. And this this program positions young people for transitioning into a tuition-free higher education experience predicated upon the success of them getting through that ninth grade academy and then subsequent years after that. But they're on a track, basically, in order to be able to do that. 25%, and I hadn't checked lately, I don't think it's changed, but 25% of those slots are allotted for people of color. The question then becomes, how are we getting that information in the hands of those parents?
Right.
And how are we inspiring and supporting those young people in trying to establish that as a goal for their own lives so that they can now have access to those kinds of things? I'm going to end by saying this. We didn't have any of that available to us as a young child growing up poor. There was a library between my school and my home that I stopped at every day and came home with a pile of books. My parents, even before people talked about phonics and reading is fundamental, understood that my dad with an 8th grade education, my mom with a 12th grade education, understood that there was some value in education and that if my children could just do something in education, they could unlock the door to their success in life.
Right.
And so I would come home with that stack of books every day. For Christmas, I would ask for an almanac, a world book of facts and almanac every year, and I would dive into that document and just absorb everything I could, learning about countries. I couldn't travel there, but learning about countries, learning about sports, learning about entertainment, learning about history, learning about a whole lot of things that mattered. Because what that did was it made me a person who then was able to become conversational, to be able to step into a room anywhere I went and be able to connect with people, even though I may have come from a different educational background or socioeconomic status or racial or ethnic identity, and still compete with them at good levels. I have been blessed in life. I give no credit to myself other than the fact that I know God and believe in God, that Jack and Eddie Anderson laid the foundation for me, and that I was inspired enough to want to walk into their shoes. But I had a great career as a mental health professional for a period of time, serving as a counseling center director. I had a great experience as a higher education director, educator, at one point being the dean of humanities and social sciences. And for the last 9 years, I've been working in the mayor's office. This is a young kid who grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, poor, who just took advantage of stopping by the library every day to grab a handful of books and read everything that was put in front of me. When I took the English proficiency exam at Oakwood many years ago, I got the highest score that year. Because reading is fundamental.
No question.
And I tell people all the time, brother, I don't care what you read, just read something, man. Read a magazine, read a book, read a newspaper, read a cartoon, read everything you can get your hands on.
Right.
It increases your vocabulary. It inspires you in terms of understanding the world that is a globally connected world. It gives you a chance to go into rooms that you may not have ever imagined yourself being able to go into and feel a degree of comfort and experience a degree of success as a consequence of that. Read, read, read. My one key for success for people in life is read. If somebody said, what's the one thing that you need to do to be successful in life? I would say to them, read. Read everything you get your hands on. Just read. Read and never stop reading. Become a lifelong learner. That's my goal in life. When the day that I die and give up my last breath, I want to be learning something on the way out.
Wow. Now I've always said I'm a lifelong learner, but I didn't think I was going to go that far. But that's a lot. That's
checking
big.
out, brother. Checking out. I want to be processing, checking out. As things are shutting down, I want to be checking out.
That's cool. That's cool. I mean, listen, it's definitely a thing. Because of what I teach, I am definitely into reading, but math is another one of those things to me that is very important. You read to learn. I mean, you learn to read and then you read to learn. You know what I'm saying? If you can't read, you've shut it all down. And you're definitely right about that. And reading for enjoyment and reading to just find out other things is key. I was blessed the past few years to be able to travel to the other side of the world to teach. But I knew things about those places, some of them because I had read, because to me back then, that's the only way I was going to get there. I was never going to go to Asia or anything like that. That's impossible. I'm never going to Africa. But then I was there and I was like, okay, this is what I read about. And the people that would go with me sometimes, or the friends that I had, would talk about this place, and they're like, how do you know about that? And I'm like, oh, y'all, how do you not? Like, what y'all didn't have this in school? And they're like, yeah, well, we remember them talking about it. And I was like, wow, okay, it's not, and I didn't feel like I was better than them. I just felt like right at this moment, I'm a little better prepared because I paid attention to those things. And my mom was big on reading. She had piles of Reader's Digest in the house. And that was what we read. I mean, when there was nothing to do, here, read this. Okay, so quotable quotes and vocabulary and all of that stuff. And now as a speaker, I have a vocabulary, and I didn't know that everybody didn't have this vocabulary. I thought because I thought all my friends did the same thing I did, and sometimes when you speak to people, you're like, well, there were people that were impressed, and I was like, why are you impressed? Those were on the SAT, that's not but it's true. It makes people understand that you have invested some time. It doesn't make us better people. It might just make us better suited for a certain program or for a certain job or for, these other things. And there's skills that you don't realize that you have. I went to get a job as a bank teller when I was younger. I was 18. I'd gone to Oakwood for 1 year and I dropped out because I didn't think I was going to have enough money. I think I went for 2 years, and I came back home and I went to work at the bank, and they said, you need to have been a cashier somewhere. Have you ever been a cashier? I said, I've done it at restaurants, but that wasn't my job. But I did it sometimes. And they were like, we don't know about that. Well, here, take this math test. And as they said, take this math test, inside I began to laugh because I'm a mathematician. I'm like, whatever. So I go and sit down. It's 100 math questions, and you got about 10, 15 minutes. And at like 6 minutes, I walked up to the lady with the paper, and she said, what? I said, oh, I'm done. And she said, do you want to check them? I was like, no. And there's a guy that was sitting beside me who's struggling. And now you got to understand, in a bank, you don't do anything but add and subtract. So there was nothing but addition and subtraction on this test. There was no multiplication and no division. And I'm not looking at him like something's wrong with him. I know that I had a gift for math already. So I'm like, okay, that's what I do. And I'm looking at him, and he's struggling with this stuff, and he's cursing and he's saying all kinds of things. And, they said the time was up and he was at the bottom. And I was like, good, he made it. Then I saw he had left a lot of stuff out in the middle. And I was like, wow, that's unfortunate. So I was like, I hope he had been a cashier or something. They call me in. There's a black man sitting at the desk. And this was so telling for me. This guy is sitting there, and I walk in, and he looks over at the papers that they put on his desk. He said, Mr. Watts, he said, you've never been a cashier as a job? I said, no. He said, yeah, we really can't use you. And then he picks up my math test, and he said, and from these results on your math test, 100. Okay, training is Monday at such and such. And I was like, you assumed that I got low because I was black? I was like, You're one of us, dude. What are you doing?
Wow.
And it's the lies have been so just poured on us. It's like I say on my show on the intro. It's the greatest game of telephone ever played. It's the only one that's been successful. The old game telephone. Somebody said blacks don't know math, and they kept it right. They did it all the way through because people are still saying it. And I got a job because of my math skills. I didn't have any of the other things that I was supposed to have, but because of those skills, I was able to become a bank teller and make some money. And I try to tell kids now that there are a bunch of these rumors and stereotypes and things that are against you, especially to our young brothers. But you can pass them if you do what you're supposed to do. They have the other big rumor that we don't take care of our kids, that black fathers, or the absence of black fathers, is the reasons for the decline in society and things of that nature. And the CDC, who I know is not a black organization, the Center for Disease Control, which people don't even believe does things like this. They tracked the data on this topic and found out that more black fathers live with their children than don't.
Yep.
At the time, 2.5 million versus 1.7 million.
Yep.
Okay. Furthermore, whether living in the same home or not, black fathers were more involved with their kids than other ethnic groups. So where is it coming from to push our brothers down? And it seems like it's such an intentional thing to make black men look bad. I'm trying to figure out what that is. And I'm trying to spread to these young people that that's a lie. But a lot of them hear it so much that whether it's a lie or not, it's the truth. And so I'm trying to find a way, Kenny, that we can expose these statistics, because statistics is, like they say, is just a great way to lie. I mean, if somebody says statistics, people are like, okay, well, that's wrong. That's just what it is. And being a mathematician, I'm really offended by that. But I know how it can be used against us. I want to know how we can seriously educate these kids against what's going on in society, because it feels like what they told me about, and I didn't know about this as a young kid because I never was involved, but they said you can take a pig and clean him up and shine him up and put a ribbon on him and everything, and as soon as you let him go, he's going to run back into the mud and get dirty. That's what he enjoys. And it feels like the society that we have now is so full of everybody talking, whether they have experience or knowledge or not, and that we can tell kids whatever we want, but they're going to run back to this social media or whatever it is and hear all the things that we're trying to tell them we're against. So where do we go from here to educate them about the things that are false in this society?
Well, one thing we have to do is we have to consistently show up, and we have to consistently elevate the examples of success so that we can counteract the negative images that are out there that are constantly shown on social media and celebrated on social media. It's almost like as if whenever somebody's relationship breaks down, or somebody's proven to be, a deadbeat dad, and that becomes the narrative, and that kind of becomes the big story and the thing that everybody's talking about. I launched a page on social media called Share Some Good News, specifically because I was so frustrated with all the negative stuff that I was seeing on social media. And the page is called Share Some Good News, and it hadn't been as active as some of my other pages because I don't forget that it's there, but I've got so much else going on right now. I haven't had a chance to take care of it, but I do still post there when I hear positive stuff, because it's important to hear those stories in order to change the narrative. That's how we change the narrative. We have to keep creating an infusion of positive stories to counteract the negative stuff that's going on. That imbalance that you talked about, the number of black men who are at home handling their business, doing what they need to be doing, and nobody's forcing them to do it, is a tremendous story. And when we know those stories, and when we are those stories, we need to celebrate those things in ways that other people can know that and be able to push the narrative in the direction of something so much more positive. It's easy to celebrate failure. It's easy to celebrate. When I say celebrate, I'm talking about share it, talk about it. Get little groups and gossip and stuff like that about what's going on. We need to have gossip parties about people who are doing it right. I mean, we need to celebrate these guys as heroes in our community. They're all kind of I'm not a dad. I'm not a biological dad, let me put it that way. But I'm a father to many for lots of different reasons. And I take great pride in that. Yeah. And the young men that I mentor and have mentored over the years that respect that, believe that, know that, understand that, also take great pride in that. And we celebrate that success. We celebrate that experience. The reality is this. We don't hear those stories enough. What we tend to do is we wait till Father's Day. And then in faith institutions and more, we have, in the community, we have the Father of the Year. Right. In the faith institutions, we have Father's Day, and we have all the fathers stand up. We give them a little pin or a little calendar or something like that. We need to do more. And I'm not saying those are good things. Right. I'm just saying we kind of centralize it to these moments. And reality, 365, 7 days a week, their brothers on the job. I mean, they're showing up. In fact, some of these brothers are doing overtime in terms of what's happening. I mean, they're punching the clock hard. Right. And they're punching the clock for their own families. They're punching the clock for some others because the Big Brothers Big Sisters program is predicated on taking in a young person who needs a mentor. But so many of the bigs are fathers themselves. Right. And they got their own families, but they're putting in extra work because they understand the responsibility out there. So we got to find a way to change that narrative by, as I said, elevating the stories of those that are positive, infusing those things into our psyche in the same way that we infuse the negative things with social media. We need to take it to social media. We need to have strategic and intentional celebrations of Black male excellence and fatherhood and responsibility and mentoring in our communities so that we can do so by example. We can lead by example. We can say, here's an example. I know what those statistics over there say. I know what the rumor says. I know what the myth is and the hype is, but here's the reality. Right. And see, again, with great respect to people that came from different experiences, I don't identify directly with the experience of a broken home in terms of one parent. I had two parents. We were poor, but they were two parents. There were two poor parents in the house who loved us and cared for us. When I say poor, it was like they didn't have any money at all. We were low income bracket. We understood that, but we didn't bemoan that, Brian. We didn't, my dad and mom didn't come home every day and say, we're poor. Right. No, they worked hard every single day. Yeah. They saw in their children opportunities that they could not access themselves that they wanted us to have. And so they knew that by investing in us every single day, it would make a difference. Yeah. We were a family that prayed together. We ate together. We went to church together. We played together. We were a family who represented what a family could be. Right. In terms of our ability to grow and be able to thrive in spite of the circumstances. And there are so many homes right now. And I see young brothers all the time. I see mid-range brothers and older brothers on the job, man, handling their business. And I'm like, yo, man, I'm just inspired by watching you do your thing. Yeah. We need to be encouraging those people. We need to be acknowledging and affirming them. And they may push it off like, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm dad. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. We need to celebrate that though, because there are too many people celebrating the myth. Right. And the myth is in people's heads, and they playing that tape recorder over and over again. Right. Oh man, there's too many dads not around. You hear people lead with that all the time. Too many dads not in the home. That's why there are too many gangs out on the street. And that's why people are underachieving in school. You hear it all the time. That's what people lead with.
But they're not even looking at what's happening, because in most gangs, it's a dad and his son in the gang. I mean, that's not the problem. So yeah, it's a lot. And I'm like you, I'm not a father. Like you, I grew up with two parents in the home. I couldn't understand the question of which parent do you live with. I never understood any of that, and we were not well off. So they invested in us to be somebody, and basically we did what they wanted. I mean, it happened. Their investment paid off to a great degree. I do believe that we definitely need to celebrate this, and that's one of the things that this show is meant to do. That's why it's called Come Together. Definitely want people to come together. We want to showcase Black men in excellence, and to talk about the issues as well. And you are one of those Black men of excellence. even though you're a mentor to many as on paper, you were a mentor to me, and when you probably didn't even know you were being a mentor to me, just for being you, just for being one of those guys who was doing his thing while I was in Huntsville, going to Oakwood and watching you, you know, become even more of Kenny Anderson than you were. You know, you were always that positive guy, and it always felt like we were talking to somebody who was a local celebrity. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody said your name in a positive light, and oh, that's Kenny Anderson. I'm like, okay. And then we found out, okay, that is Kenny Anderson. You know what I mean? It's what happened, and that's the kind of respect and things that I want people to see for Black men. Period. It's not all the ghetto life and the criminal lives and all of these things. These are not Black things. These are just criminal things. These are things that bad people do, and bad people come in all races and shapes and sizes and colors. And we are not a people of that type of lifestyle. We have people who are great, and we don't just have those few that you celebrate every Black History Month. We have plenty of people that you've never heard of, and people that are coming up to do even greater things. And they don't all have to be athletes or singers. Not that anything's wrong with that, but they're not all entertainment people. There are people striving to make the community and the world better, and that's what we want to show. So thank you so much for coming out today. I know you got your show coming on soon today, so I appreciate you giving me this time and taking out the time to be with us. But we'll definitely get some ideas from you on how to better celebrate some of our men, and we'll try to institute that into the show as well.
Hey, listen, Brian, I'm just honored to be your inaugural guest on this platform. I wish you the absolute best in this journey. I'm going to be following you and making sure that I am inspired by the things that you share with your guests as well. It's been a privilege and an honor to be here with you today.
Well, thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you soon, ladies and gentlemen. This was Kenny Anderson, the director of what's it again? Diversity,
Equity and Inclusion for the City of Huntsville.
For the City of Huntsville, Alabama. Now the #1, the biggest city in Huntsville now, and it was not all the time. So y'all have done a lot down there. So appreciate you. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.